Years ago, on a planet called Qwark, a defect came into existence, and this defect's name was XJ0461. However, within him, there sparked something different, something unique. Upon uncovering a plot that threatened to plunge the Solana galaxy into chaos, he did the unthinkable. He escaped. Crashing onto the quiet, desolate world of Belden, he met a mechanic unlike any other, Ratchet, the last known descendant of the Lombaxes. Together, the two would form an unlikely alliance. The duo would become known to the galaxy as Ratchet and Clank. They set out in search of a hero, Captain Copernicus Leslie Qwark. Dangerously self-absorbed, Qwark would lure them into his headquarters on planet Umbris before showing his true colours, betraying Ratchet and Clank. He'd chosen himself over the galaxy that looked up to him. That betrayal caused a ripple in their relationship that in time would forge a deeper bond. What began as a mission for justice became something deeper, a shared purpose. A fractured duo, each with their own reasons to fight, to stop Chairman Drek and to face Qwark, and to uncover what it truly meant to be a hero. And in that struggle, Ratchet and Clank became more than a team, more than friends. They'd become brothers. From the shadows, another danger crept forth. Silent, unseen, inevitable. Far from the Solana galaxy, in the distant reaches of the Bogon galaxy, a strange encounter would set fate in motion once again. A thief, unknown, swift, attempted to steal a mysterious creature from a man known as Abercrombie Fizzwidget. At first glance, the creature seemed harmless, even cute, but behind those innocent eyes, chaos stirred. Worse still, when Ratchet failed to stop the thief struck at Ratchet's heart itself. They snatched up Clank and vanished. Tormented, manipulated, a pawn in a far greater game, Ratchet gave chase relentlessly and yieldingly and stopped the thief cold. This was the first time Clank had been taken, but it wouldn't be the last. There was more to this thief than met the eyes. A Lombax, Angela, the other last descendant of the species. As pieces of their past fell into place, it became clear that Fizzwidget was no innocent bystander. He was a ghost from Ratchet and Clank's past, Captain Qwark. Bound by duty, Ratchet and Clank rose, standing tall once more. Together with Angela at their side, they stopped Qwark, saving the Bogon galaxy and deepening their bond. But this would not be the last time danger befell Ratchet and Clank. On a desolate backwater world, a Tyrannoid army descended. This was the home of an orphan, a Lombax, Ratchet. The world he had grown up on, the only home he had ever known, was under threat, and he could not stand by. Together with Clank and the Galactic Rangers, he rose to defend it. They embarked on a quest, a hunt for the one man who might hold the truth, Captain Qwark. But the hero they sought was no hero at all. His mind fractured, twisted by years of madness. Through broken fragments of memory, the truth emerged. Not Qwark, a far darker secret, hidden deep within his memories. Dr. Nefarious. The galaxy teetered on the edge of ruin, and as the battles raged, disaster struck once again. Clank, kidnapped, replaced by a reflection, a cold machine. Clunk, unseen, disaster spread, until Ratchet, relentless, rose. He chased the truth, he freed Clank, he destroyed Clunk, and hope was restored. Together Ratchet, Clank, even Qwark, they stood united against Nefarious, and in the final clash, the villain fell, banished to silence, forgotten in the shadows. Dr. Nefarious would never be seen again.
Unidentified craft approaching.
Clank vanished. Vanished along with Ratchet and Owl. Dragged across the stars into the forgotten sector of the Solana galaxy. To a region so dark, so twisted, it was known only as the Shadow Sector. And at its core, Dread Zone. But this time, Clank was not the only one to disappear. He too had been taken alongside his old friend and the ever-loyal Owl. Ratchet, stripped of choice, was thrust into an arena. to become a gladiator for the entertainment of the masses. Clank, wired into his ear, became his lifeline, his navigation, his conscience, his only voice of reason in a world that had none. Forced to kill, to survive, to entertain, to live, they were prisoners. Not just of the arena, but of the galaxy that had forgotten who they were. Still together with Al, they rose. Battle after brutal battle, Ratchet climbed the ranks, until tragedy struck. Al, shot down, raised by the reigning champion. The so-called legend himself, Ace Hardlight. Their names dragged through the mud, their image mocked and twisted. Heroes now villains in the eyes of those watching. But Ratchet and Clank didn't break. They endured, and eventually, they overcame. Ace fell. And in the final episode of Dread Zone, they faced Gleeman Fox himself, the leader of Dread Zone, in a battle not just for their lives, but for their very legacy, and for the lives of the many fans that made it possible. They won, not just winning freedom, not just gaining vengeance, but redemption. They became heroes again, icons, legends. Finally, they could rest. But legends never stay silent forever. After Dread Zone fell, Ratchet and Clank found peace at last. The chaos faded, the battles ended, and the galaxy moved on. They returned to Kerwan, settling into the steel embrace of Metropolis City. A place where the lights never dimmed and peace seemed eternal. But peace, as always, was only calm before the storm. A name once buried in hatred rose again. From the shadows of history itself, Emperor Tachyon, a warlord born of vengeance, forged in the ashes of a species driven to extinction by Ratchet's kind. He didn't want control, he didn't want conquest, he wanted Ratchet dead. An all-out assault shattered Metropolis, and from the flames Ratchet fled. Guided by fragments of memory and desperate questions, Ratchet and Clank thrusted across the stars into the heart of the Polaris galaxy. Along the way, allies joined their cause. The ever-absurd Captain Qwark, the fearless Talwyn Apogee, and the rusted war veterans Kronk and Zephyr. Their mission: stop Tachyon, unravel the mysteries of the weapon crafted from the Lombax millennia ago, and uncover the truth of Ratchet's past. But whilst Ratchet looks back, Clank was being pulled forward by something strange, something unseen. Whispers in the wind of space, flickers at the edge of time. They were called the Zoni, being a pure energy invisible to all but Clank. At first they were guides, offering power, upgrades, warnings, but soon they became more than strange allies. They became an obsession. They haunted Clank's every step, hinting at a large purpose not yet fulfilled, until they took him, vanished, gone from time and space as if he had never existed. Ratchet stood victorious over Tachyon, but empty-handed, because Clank had been claimed. Not by an enemy, not by fate, but by something else, something older, something watching from the folds between galaxies, waiting. This is what set Ratchet on his quest to planet Murdergrew, what set him off to find Clank. Ratchet and Clank had been separated and kidnapped plenty of times, but this was different. There was no way of knowing if Clank was safe, if Clank were even alive, and it was only a matter of time till we would finally find out. Desperate and broken, when hope seemed lost, salvation came in the form of a whisper from the Iris supercomputer. A single lead, a name: Darkwater. A pirate captain thought lost to legend, whose trail led to the cursed world of Murdergrew. But fate was cruel. Upon boarding a pirate vessel, Ratchet and Talwyn fell into the hands of Rusty Pete, condemned to the forsaken shores of Hulafar Island. There, amid rum-soaked sands and shattered wreckage, they uncovered a dark mystery, the secret of the Fulcrum Star. Battling hordes of ghost pirates, they pieced together the truth, and with it, revelations. Clank was not the only soul bound to the whisper of the Zoni, but Darkwater too. He had been touched by the Zoni. To him, they were not phantoms, but friends. He had crafted a great telescope, an eye cast into the abyss of the stars, a device that could locate and find the mysterious Zoni from across the galaxies. And through the lens, a dark truth was revealed. The Zoni were not guiding Ratchet by chance. They were being led. Every step, every whisper, every haunting vision, all threads in a web spun by a single mind. A robot, No, a villain thought destroyed. The one name Ratchet had sworn he'd never hear again. Dr. Nefarious. A race across the stars, Ratchet with Captain Qwark at his side ventured into the depths of the Brigus Nebula, desperate to uncover Clank's whereabouts, hidden somewhere within the shadows. Guided by whispers of the Zoni, Ratchet battled foe after foe, but amid the chaos, he heard a name carried on the currents of rebellion: Alistair Azimuth, a Lombax. For the first time in his life, Ratchet was no longer alone, no longer the last of his kind. Azimuth was more than just a survivor. He was a warrior, a mentor, a Lombax who had once fought beside Ratchet's father. Together they dreamed of the impossible, to restore their people, to bring the Lombaxes home. But in the heart of the nebula, a great secret stirred: the Great Clock. An ancient construct, hidden within the folds of time itself, its purpose to guard the balance of past, present, and future. And there, Clank returned, escaped from Nefarious' grasp. He found himself burdened with visions. In dreams he walked beside his father Orvis, the very creator of the clock, long since dead at Nefarious' hands. Through these visions, Clank reached Ratchet and Azimuth. He begged them to go back, to turn back the threads of time and save Orvis. They tried, and they failed. But Clank was saved, wrested from Nefarious' scheme. Together they pursued the Doctor, unraveled the dangers of what Azimuth sought, to wield the Great Clock, to rewrite history, to undo the exile of the Lombaxes. Ratchet knew the truth, that to tamper with time was to endanger all creation. But Azimuth, blinded by grief, saw only betrayal. In rage, he struck, and Ratchet fell. Yet time itself bent. Clank, the true keeper of the clock, reversed the moment, and Ratchet rose again. Not to fight, but to speak. He reached Azimuth, not with his weapon, but with his heart. And in that final moment, Azimuth saw his errors. Sacrificing himself, he restored balance to the clock. And once more, Ratchet was the last Lombax. 2 years had passed, and Ratchet, Clank, had both retired. The Polaris Galaxy found itself under new leadership, President Qwark. For the first time, peace endured, but whispers carried through the void. Rumor that Dr. Nefarious had cheated death once more. On a night like any other, Qwark summoned Ratchet and Clank to accompany him, to stand at his side as he received yet another hollow award. But the moment was shattered. From the shadows, Nefarious struck, a villain reborn in chaos. Yet fate twisted the night even further. A storm ripped the skies apart, and from the clouds descended something great. In an instant, Ratchet, Clank, Qwark, and even Nefarious himself were taken, kidnapped, cast into the unknown. 4 enemies forced to fight as one. Their prison revealed itself a colossal machine known as the Ephemeris, a device built to harvest entire worlds, stealing creatures from across the galaxy, leaving only ruin in its wake. To destroy it, they sought the Architect, the only one who knew its secrets. And with him came the revelation. The true mastermind was not a warlord, not a tyrant. It was Mr. Dinkles, the Architect's pet, or rather, a spirit. An ancient malevolent force that had possessed the small creature, before leaping into a new, far more powerful host. The galaxy trembled as its fury was unleashed. In chaos, it struck at Qwark, and for a heartbeat, all seemed lost. But then, the impossible. Dr. Nefarious intervened. He saved Qwark, and for the first time, the galaxy was spared. Not by its heroes, but by the very villain who had so often sought its ruin. A year had passed, Qwark defeated and depressed after losing re-election, wandering in the shadows of his former glory. But peace would not last. From the void came a new wave of destruction, the Gungarian Marauders. Worlds fell as planetary defenses across the Polaris mysteriously shut down. Desperate for redemption, Qwark reformed the legendary Q-Force, calling upon Ratchet and Clank. But in the chaos, the face of the enemies were revealed. Not a stranger, not a new warlord, but a man forgotten. Stuart Zergo, once nothing more than a bitter fan, a background figure in the shadows of the Protopet disaster. Zergo had been there all along, hiding, watching, disguised under a hollow disguise. He had masqueraded as a mysterious plumber, lurking just out of sight, biding his time, now emerged at last, hungering for revenge against the hero who had betrayed the galaxy so long ago, unable to forgive like the rest of the galaxy. The battle was long and bitter, but at last, Zergo was cornered, his schemes undone. He was taken into custody, his reign of deception ended, and yet, in the final moments, justice slipped, for it was Qwark himself who sent him tumbling. Plunged into the fire, cast into the lava below, Zergo fell. His sentence decided not by fate, but by Qwark's clumsy fingers. Deep in the Polaris galaxy, on the hull of a ship, Ratchet and Clank work tirelessly to run repairs on the Deadlocked 7, a prison vessel carrying the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy, Vendra Prog. Without warning, chaos erupted. The ships came under attack, and in the blink of an eye, Vendra was freed by her brother, Neptune Prog. Ratchet was hurled into the cold void of space. Qwark and Zephyr, loyal to the very end, were left behind amidst the exploding wreckage. Stowing away on the enemy ship, Ratchet and Clank plunged into the heart of this dark plot. Vendra and Neptune sought to open trans-dimensional portals to bring Vendra's people from the Netherverse to this universe. The siblings' goal was clear: to reclaim their home, mirroring that of Ratchet's goal, to restore his people and bring them home. The Progs built their own Dimensionator, opening trans-dimensional portals to communicate with their lost kin and plot their return. But Neptune, torn between loyalty and reason, intervened, allowing Ratchet his freedom, placing hope in him to save Vendra. Haunted by the death of Qwark and Zephyr, Ratchet and Clank pursued the siblings relentlessly, until finally Neptune relented. He agreed to surrender on the condition that his sister would be spared. With the siblings defeated, Neptune honored his words, turning himself and Vendra over to justice. And in the final, fleeting moments, Clank's hands closed over the Dimensionator. In the distant reaches of the Solana galaxy, on a world both familiar and strange, Lombax dreamed of greatness. His name was Ratchet. But this was not the Ratchet we had come to know. This was a Ratchet from another dimension, a universe one step to the side. Here on the planet Velden, he sought to join the Galactic Rangers, but Captain Qwark, arrogant and prideful, rejected him outright. On the nearby world of Quatu, a small defect was born, a machine, unlike the others of his line. He fled the factory of his creator, and in the escape, crash-landed on Velden. Here the two met. Clank spoke of a rising villain, Chairman Drek, a tyrant carving out pieces of worlds to forge his own world. Together, Ratchet and Clank set out to warn the Rangers, and in a twist of irony, Qwark was forced to grant them honorary status. Though this envy burnt in silence, world after world the duo fought to save the galaxy, until envy tipped the scales. Qwark betrayed them. His jealousy shattered their unity, and in the chaos, Drek succeeded. An entire planet was lost. Defeated, Ratchet turned away, but Clank, ever steadfast, rekindled his courage and pulled him back into the fight. Their battle grew fiercer than ever before, and as the war reached its climax, Drek himself was betrayed by a biological mind far more sinister, Dr. Nefarious, a villain reborn in a parallel universe. Ratchet and Clank stood together against him, and when the dust settled, this world, this dimension, was saved. This was one of the many dimensions in the multiverse. One of these dimensions did not share Ratchet's fortune. A world where hope was shattered and resistances rose from the ashes. A world where Nefarious had won. 8 long years had passed. Ratchet and Clank, celebrated heroes, were honored with a grand parade, hosted by Skid, Qwark, and Rusty Pete. But beneath the cheers of the crowd, destiny was waiting. Clank presented Ratchet with a gift. The rebuilt Dimensionator, a key to lost answers, a chance to finally find his people. But before Ratchet could ever grasp with his feelings, the past returned. Dr. Nefarious. The Mad Doctor struck once more, ripping the fabric of reality wide open. Dimensional rifts tore the skies apart, scattering Ratchet and Clank into a universe not of their own, a place where their legend had never been written. Here, they would forge new bonds. Ratchet would encounter Kit, a timid but powerful warbot, haunted by her past. Clank, broken and alone, would be discovered by Rivet, a lone Lombax rebel scarred by war, fighting to free her world from tyranny. For in this dimension, Nefarious was not a joke. Here he was an emperor, a conqueror, dark and absolute, who ruled with iron claw. Together, Ratchet, Clank, Rivet, and Kit rallied the resistance. They met Gary, the wise mystic who saw truth others could not, son of the ever-mysterious plumber. They fought beside the eccentric Captain Quantum, this world's answer to Qwark, and for a moment, hope began to flicker. But the Emperor was not so easily denied. He betrayed his counterpart, cast aside the foolish Doctor, and set his sights on Ratchet's own dimension. Worlds trembled, the multiverse itself quaked, and as the final battle erupted, past traumas came to light. Rivet, long burdened by the loss of her arm, discovered the truth. It was Kit, years ago, who had struck her down, a weapon forced to obey. Pain gave way to understanding, and in that moment, enemies became family. Together, the 4 heroes, Ratchet, Clank, Rivet, and Kit, rose against the Emperor. A war across dimensions ignited. Allies from every world joined the fight, and when all seemed to be coming to a close, it was the forsaken Dr. Nefarious who, in one final desperate act, struck down the tyrant he had once worshipped. The multiverse was saved, the Emperor was no more, and Rivet and Kit, their scars laid bare, found peace at last. But for Ratchet, the Dimension Eater still called. His people were still out there. And so the story of the Lombax and his robotic pal was far from over. This is the story so far, but what comes next? Only time will tell.